Hey, everybody. Welcome to the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, what we do on this podcast is talk about what B2B sales and marketing leaders, operators, and experts are doing today to really break through and grow their businesses at exponential levels. Let's get it in the interview. At the end, I'll give you an update on my courses, and you can check out my website at b2brevenue.com, and it's Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. Hey, Tim, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, Brian, I sure appreciate you having me. I've been in the sales and consulting business for almost 20 years now. Grew up in the engineering business and worked for a couple of companies and turned a couple of companies around that were losing money and made them profitable again. And then I decided I wanted to go build one from scratch down in Mexico, and got the opportunity to do that a few years back. And we were so successful building that and several other business units that we sold to private equity in 2015. And so I got to retire for the first time. Wrote a book, kind of like we do, I guess, and just been doing some management consulting work ever since, and enjoying life.
Cool. What's your specialty? What area or industries do you fit in best?
So it was interesting in the forensic engineering business. Since we worked for insurance companies, we really crossed all industry verticals. So, I mean, I've worked cases in oil and gas, I've worked cases in healthcare, I've worked cases in financial services. It's really across the board. What you find is the process is the same regardless of the industry. And there's only a few different, few nuances as you get into it. So I like to say that I'm industry agnostic, but there's definitely some places I've got more depth of knowledge than others for sure.
Cool. And what's your focus today? Are you consulting or training?
I am. Yeah, I'm working with a really good friend of mine here in San Antonio. She's got it's a management consulting and technology shop. So we're basically helping people get more efficient, leaning on technology, obviously these days, as the talent pool is shrinking. And so figuring out how we can leverage technology and not necessarily people. And then also the management consulting for the changing of the business processes as a result of that. So a lot of fun.
Cool. And what got you into sales?
Oh man, playing golf actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I played high school and college golf, and then I played professionally for a couple of years after I graduated school, and was working part time at a club down in South Texas, and got to know a member pretty well. And he said he found out about my business and marketing degree, and he said, "I want to hire you into my engineering company, and then I want you to learn what we do, and then I want you to go sell it." And I said, "Dude, I'm a professional golfer, man. Forget all that business stuff." And he just kept after me. And about 6 months later, I finally caved, and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Yeah. And what do you like about it?
I love the business world because I ended up getting an MBA at night when I was working full time. And so everything I look at now, I look at like a case study. And so it's, I look at everything objectively from just a standpoint of what in here is broken, what could be improved on, what can we do to make people's lives better. And then I just actively work every day to try to make that happen. And so it's just fun for me because, business is really, at the end of the day, it's all about the people. And I think what I've found in my life is that there are too many people that just exist, and they don't actually ever strive to achieve anything really special. And I think what it is incumbent upon us as leaders is to identify what's really cool and special about a person and build an environment where we can nurture and develop that talent to come out of it. My favorite story is I hired a guy out of Kerrville, Texas. It was a fire marshal. And I told him, I said, "I can make you a rock star in Latin America." And he didn't see it for himself at the time, but it took me about 3.5 years, and he's actually now my old CEO. So when I sold, I made him CEO of my Mexican company. And so take a guy that was making, $35,000 a year as a fire marshal in Kerrville, Texas, to now, being the CEO of a major international operation down in Mexico, making about $1.85. That changes his world forever. And so I believe that, from a leadership perspective, if we can have that sort of impact in people's lives, then, we're blessed to be a blessing.
Well, take us through that journey. How did you get him from even probably not believing that he could do it to not only believing he could do it to doing it?
So I think first and foremost, I always relate to the idea of developing employees to just like raising kids, right? So he was 2 at the time when we sold, and now he's 6. First, you just got to love on them like crazy. They have to know that they can trust you. They have to know that you have their best interest first at heart, and they have to see what you do every day in your actions that are designed to promote them and take them to where they also want to go. And so, my job was really just being the cheerleader early on. Hey guys, we've got this incredible opportunity in Latin America. It's untapped. It's ours for the taking. All we got to go is go do it. If you're willing to go with me, man, I will make it happen for us. And so it was never me saying, hey, you go get it done. It was me saying, hey guys, let's go. And I would fly down there with them. We'd go meet with prospects early on when we didn't have that much work yet. We'd beat the drum. We'd tell everybody, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. And we started to generate some interest. We did a lot of teaching and training early on because, technical knowledge is something that they need in Latin America, but they don't have. And, frankly, timing always works in mysterious ways. And I always say, obviously, God has a plan for everything. So, I was down in Monterrey, Mexico. And one of the stories I write about in my book is I was meeting with this Juridico, which basically is a staff attorney for the second largest insurance company down there. And I was explaining to him back then, it was in broken Spanish because I didn't speak Spanish very well back then. I was explaining to him what we do. And he said, so you do forensics, huh? And I said, yes, sir. He said, hold on a minute. He comes back out with his file and he shows me these pictures of this dead lady. And he says, so here's the story. So we had this guy that divorced his wife, married his secretary, bought a $2.5 million life insurance policy on her. 10 days later, she slips, falls, and dies in the bathroom. We're the insurance company, and of course, we're suspicious. But the medical examiner's report says the cause of death is undetermined. So right now, we're on the hook for the $2.5 million. Can you help? And I said, it's really funny. I said, that's normally not exactly what we do. I said, but I just happened to hire a guy that's a Puerto Rican biomechanical engineer out of Tulane University in Louisiana. And he speaks Spanish because he's from Puerto Rico. And I think we could probably help you out on this thing. So we fly down to Monterrey. We measure the bathroom. We build a 3D model. We start analyzing all the marks on her body and putting them in, where he beat her in the bathroom. And so fast forward, we testify in Mexican court that he killed his wife. The judge rules in our favor, which means the insurance companies don't have to pay the policy. The governor of Nuevo León, which is a state around Monterrey, reopened the criminal investigation and the guy took him to jail. So this made all the newspapers in Mexico, and we became almost celebrities overnight in the insurance community because the insurance companies never win those kind of cases down there. And so when I went to Mexico City a few months later, they're like, oh, you're that guy. And so it just started this whirlwind for us. I was down there it was June of 2005, and October, Hurricane Wilma hits Cancun. And so the property vice president calls me and says, hey, Tim, what do you know about segregating hurricane damage from pre-existing damage? Because as everybody knows in the insurance business, you let your properties, you don't do preventive maintenance on them. You let them, kind of decay and deform. And then when a big hurricane comes, you want to get them completely remodeled on insurance money. And that's not exactly how the policy is supposed to work. And so he said, well, what do you know about separating out these two types of damage? I said, well, I know a lot about it. He said, well, come on down to Cancun. So then we spent 8 months in Cancun. And so that started just our whirlwind journey back in 2005 of, a bunch of work all over Latin America, all through Venezuela, Argentina, Colombia, Chile. We did the earthquake in Chile in 2011. We did a bunch of just other one-off projects, refineries in Uruguay. And so it's just been a whirlwind. It's been so much fun. And for me, with the guys that I hired, it really put them in the best position for them to be successful, like the guy from Kerrville, because his family's actually from just outside of Monterrey. So he was perfectly bilingual. And it really put him in a position where he could maximize his talents and skills. I always say that for everybody, just like in sales, wherever your passion, skill set, and profitability meet, that's an ideal situation where you can draw a circle around it. And so that's what I try to do with people every day is what's really cool and unique about you, and how can we build an environment and put you in a position to get you ultimately where we think you could be of most effectiveness.
Yeah. And what do you look for in people? The people that you both work for and work with?
Well, the nice thing about, now with being, retired is, the pressure's off, so you can be very choosy. I look for, there's a popular performance management book out there that says the vast majority of people give 85%. And then the question for leaders is how do you unlock that other 15%? So if you want to clock in and clock out, that's great, but I'm probably not a good fit for you. I like people that are high potentials. I like people that are wanting to do something more than they are doing today, that are willing to stretch, and they're willing to be adventurous, frankly. Like I said, I had those guys that went down to Latin America. That was my core team to build that company down there. We were literally going into the unknown. You hear all the stories about kidnappings and how dangerous it is down there. And here I am, a 6'2" white guy that speaks Spanish, going into, a lot of these places. So everybody always asks, well, weren't you scared? It's like, well, no, it was more for me. It was an adventure. I had a bunch of life insurance on me, and I had a $5 million kidnapping ransom policy. So I really didn't have to worry about anything. But it was like, go down there and get it done. So I look for people that are adventurous in their soul, and that want to achieve something that they haven't already gotten.
Yeah. And when you're selling to clients, what's your approach?
Well, it's funny. So I've taken probably 6 or 7 of those sales training, curriculums over the course of the years, the Challenger sale and spin selling and, Barry Ryan selling through curiosity and, Miller Hyman method and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, I believe that it's first and foremost, the biggest challenge in sales is to have an honest conversation, because at first they're going to want to lie to you. So you have to develop enough credibility where they're like, okay, Tim, you obviously know enough about our world that I can tell you what's really going on here. So once you get to the truth of the matter, you find that there's opportunity that exists every day. The biggest challenge I think I see with salespeople is they don't have enough credibility to come to the table and have that real conversation. And so it's essentially it's a shotgun approach to sales where they're just playing the numbers game. Well, if I talk to 100 people, I'll get 2 or 3 sales out of it. For me, it's no, I look at, if I've got 5 or 10 prospects, there's probably 90 or, 4 out of 5 that need something that I can do for them. Yeah. And so it's just a total rethinking of how the sales engagement really should work. But that's just the way that I believe.
Well, I think it's good if you have that. Right. And sometimes early in your career, you don't have that knowledge, that experience. But if you can have that conversation, it's great. And I think too many people today are just, like you said, shotgunning it, trying to find somebody that's in market that doesn't know you yet. Right?
Well, and I think too, you've seen, a lot of these big companies, like in San Antonio, for example, with, just take an industry like payroll. You'll have, 20 kids that are all working for ADP, and it becomes a running joke in the community. Well, oh, that's my new ADP rep, because they only last about, 6 months or so. And so that just, there's just a huge credibility loss, even on the reputational side, that it seems like people just don't even understand or care about managing. And we've seen obviously with the mass layoffs and everything else that goes on these days, where there is very little loyalty to the employees anymore. And I think, obviously you need to hire the right talent originally, but once you've hired the talent and made the investment, work with that person to make them successful. Don't just, put them out there and say, hey, sink or swim. And then if they, if they sink, then you hire 5 more guys tomorrow and then try to see if they sink or swim. It just kills all sort of momentum, and it doesn't build any long-term continuity in the industry or even in the community. In San Antonio, we always joke it's a big, small town, right? So, the business community is fairly tight. And so we all know each other. Yeah. And so, you come in as an outside salesperson from, anything that you're trying to sell. And if you don't take the time to invest, you're going to get, you'll have the drive-by sales, you'll get lucky here and there, but you're never going to really build, I always say, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. If you spend the time, energy, and effort to really develop a referral relationship and network, kind of like the swim coaches like Jack Daly likes to talk about, then essentially you quit selling probably 2 or 3 or 4 years into your career, and you're just managing relationships, and you're making more money than you ever thought you would, because you're making more sales than you ever did, but you had to go about it in a different way.
And let's talk about that, because what I heard was, that rapport stage where you get past them telling you what you want to hear, and then you try and get to them. They probably have a need. Because that's I always look, like if you had a carpenter who's a neighbor of yours, everybody has carpentry work that they need done in their house, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not a high priority and you're not in market for it. But if somebody came in and go, oh, you want that man cave? Well, what do you think? You want a big TV? You want a bar? Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah. Right. That's real selling, right? Because once you have that rapport, and that's what I heard you say, that you build the rapport first, and then you start digging into what they're facing, and they probably have a case that fits what you can do.
Yeah, I think what you have to understand about, especially in the small to medium-sized business space, is 80% of these owners are running their businesses every day, and they're sacrificing the important for the urgent. All they're doing is putting out fires. They don't do an annual strategic plan. They don't have an operating budget. They don't do forecasting. They don't do a 12-week cash flow forecast, and they're operating by the seat of their pants. They don't have any key performance indicators that they really look at to measure the health of their business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. They're just trying to figure it out as they go along. And so if you can bring any real solution, whether it's payroll or whether it's HR consulting or whether it's, management consulting services, leadership coaching, every single one of those people has that need. The question is, you have to get them to recognize that they have that need. So that's why I said, you got to go with the credibility piece first, and, now that I've got enough gray hair to sit in front of them and swap stories, they recognize that I've got credibility and I'm not a 22-year-old kid trying to sell a payroll service. But yeah, you got to get in there and say, okay, hey, what's going on with you? What's top of mind for you? And, I think the skill in sales is helping them to connect the dots between what's important for them, tying it back to whatever your product or service is, and showing them how, if they do decide to do business with you, you can actually alleviate some of the issues that they're having and take some of their headaches off the table and let them focus on other areas. And so that's, I think that's really the correct skill in consultative selling. But it's tough to teach that.
It is tough. This is a skill.
It's learned over time.
It's not just knowledge. Right.
That's right.
You can say, oh, go become an expert. Well, what does that mean? How do I do it? It's contextual. Each client is a little different. You have to think on your feet. Right.
Well, and I think too, you have these days, there's, we talked about, you asked about the sales training, 90% of salespeople never get any sort of formalized training either. Right. So you're taking a kid that has really never done professional sales before, throw them out on the street, tell them to go knock on doors, be successful without giving them any training or education. You give them a bunch of flyers and pamphlets and marketing brochures, and you tell them to go be successful. And yeah, there are some kids that go out there and figure it out and simply by the shotgun approach, they get enough, they get lucky enough to sustain themselves. But that's just that for me, that's just a terrible way to really develop, young talent. And just, it's such an inefficient use of time that it just irks me from a values perspective.
but it seems to be the norm today, doesn't it?
It is, absolutely. Oh, it happens all the time.
Because people are focusing on the activity KPIs instead of the accomplishments. They don't, if they get training, they get 2 days of training, which is really trying to memorize a bunch of questions and stuff and a process. But it takes a long time to internalize that, to make it part of your personality, part of the way you think.
Well, and I think too, as a 22-year-old kid, you don't have any good contextual frame of reference for yourself sitting in the shoes of a business owner.
Parties, yeah.
Yeah, you don't know what it means to run a construction company, or you don't know what it means to run a manufacturing business. You don't know what it means to, have a key employee take 3 or 4 employees and go start a competing firm, right down the street and take some of your clients with them. You don't have any of that knowledge base to operate from, and so it's near impossible for you to relate to the owner. I think part of the reason we see females that are successful in sales is because the vast majority of business owners are still male. And so if a cute girl comes and says, hey, I'd like to buy you lunch or buy you a cup of coffee, most guys are going to say yes. So at least they get his attention. And that's half the battle, is just getting the attention.
Yeah. What do you take your clients through? What are you seeing typically? What I heard was that they work by the seat of their pants. I certainly see a lot of that. What are the key things that they're typically missing?
Well, and I would probably frame it a slightly differently. So if there's a business that's, let's say they're $2 or $3 million in annual revenue and they've been that way for 20 years, that's not a real good fit for me. Right. So, for us, it's all about companies that are growing. So if they've gone from 5 to 10 or 10 to 20 or 20 to 50, or 20, 30, 20, 40 million in revenue, by default, that growth is going to create some issues. They're going to have to hire more people. They're going to have to hire more staff. And typically what I see is, as you grow, the structure in your company gets loose. And so, you as a business owner, let's say when you're small, you can actually talk to all 20 of your employees every day. But when you've got 50 employees, you can't talk to them all every day. So now you've got to have this level of middle management that disseminates your mission, vision, voice of what we need to do down to the lower level people. And if you don't have a good communication framework in place and the structure for that, then it's going to get loose and shaky. And so I always believe that, and I've got a really good friend of mine that made the comment that leadership, we always know where we're going, right? We've got the picture of kind of where we're trying to head. And then the people at the bottom end of the chain are trying to do their best is what they can do every day. So the disconnect is always somewhere in the middle, whether it's in training, whether it's in structure, whether it's in processes or systems. And so for us, when we look at companies, we always say, what system worked for you at your smaller level, but what is not working for you now? So what do we need to redesign or re-engineer on purpose within your business systems and processes to make you more efficient and also allow you the opportunity to continue to scale? Because every single business owner that's been in business more than 5 or 6 years will tell you a story about them hitting an artificial ceiling of some nature. Right. And it's always it's always a result of essentially, I always say it's, the Peter principle in reverse, but they've reached the point of their own incompetence. And so, they've been successful as an air conditioning technician or a contractor or whatever else, but they can't get from, 2 million in sales to 3 million sales or 4 million. Well, there's a problem with in their chair, and they don't necessarily recognize it at first, but you have to bring that to light and explain to them why that's the case. And once you put some structure and support in place for them, then they can continue to scale and grow and actually do what they'd like to do best, which is typically the service piece of the business. But you've got to put some people and some structure in place to help them do all the other things that they don't do well. Most business owners are not finance guys, which is why they really don't understand balance sheets. They don't do their own bank reconciliations. And so we have to teach them about operating budgets. We have to teach them about what does a 12-week cash flow forecast look like? What does it mean to manage your cash proactively? It's just like personal finance. My wife and I sit down and we do a budget for, we're in the middle of October. We do a budget for November. Here's how much money we're going to have come in at the beginning of the month. Here's what we're going to spend it on, every dollar. And then when we arrive in November, we simply work the plan. We don't say, oh, well, hey, let's go out to dinner an extra time, or, oh, hey, we forgot something, we got to run to Target or whatever else. Well, that always blows our budget. So if you plan and strategize on the front end, you always end up better on the back end. But most people don't fail to do the planning piece.
And what's your sale like? Because I'm sure you can get a lot of initial calls, but then how do you keep the ball moving?
For us, it's, especially with the technology play, a lot of our clients, since it's a large capital investment, it's going to be a budgetary item, right? So we've got some clients that we're in, and now we've got a lot of clients that are moving to the cloud. So that can be a 2 to 5 year, migration part. So it's very, very long sales cycles. So for us, it's more about developing the relationship as a key trusted advisor, letting them know that we know what we're talking about, and then figuring out, doing an initial discovery with them to say, okay, where are you? Where do you want to go? And then are we a good fit for helping you on that journey? I have no problem telling a client no, or telling a prospect no at this point, because, frankly, if I'm trying to push something on you, it's not the right fit. You need to be asking us for our help. And so we simply educate early on, and then we provide, we check in on different milestones or key indicators, and say at some point it'll make sense for us to do X, Y, Z. And so I just, say really 90% of the work that we do early on is planning and helping them to figure out where they are, where they want to go, and at what point certain things will be important. And then it's just about the consistent follow-up. And we've been blessed now with, with some clients that have been with us for 20 and 30 years. So.
Yeah. And do you ever find that it gets stalled? I'm sure it does at certain stages where.
Oh, yeah. People get, what's so funny, especially too in the small and medium-sized business space, is so much of it hinges on the personality of the owner. Yeah. And so if they wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or they decide they want to go buy a new, King Ranch truck or something, and not do the implementation into their business, then it goes off the rails, right? But that's part of the game. And so I think still from a pure sales perspective, we've got to make sure that our funnel is large enough with a bunch of those guys that we still can predict our revenue even in the face of the dysfunction of our clients.
Yeah. And what was the motivation to write the book?
I had actually one of my employees passed away from cancer. Oh. And he was one of my cornerstone guys that we built the Latin America business around, and he passed away from cancer in 2017. And so I want to do something to honor his memory. There's a conference I speak at every year in Houston, and so I wrote the book in time to publish it for that conference, and then we distributed it. And his daughter was very, very grateful and happy that I honored his memory in that way. But I probably had 50 or 60% of it written in different articles I'd written over the years. But that really kind of kicked me in the butt to say, let's do something serious. And so it's funny, if you get motivation, you can finish things very quickly. So probably had written parts of the book for 8 years, and then over the course of one Christmas, I wrote the rest of it and got it done. But I think too, I believe that, like I said, we're blessed to be a blessing. And so the idea with the book is really trying to leave a legacy as well of, hopefully it's timeless. Hopefully it's got some good information in there that people can avoid some of the mistakes that I made, and allow them to, ultimately achieve better, quicker.
Cool. And where would people go to follow you and learn more about your work?
I'm all over LinkedIn. I've got a Facebook page for the book. And obviously, people can always reach out and call or send an email. We do a lot of, I live in San Antonio, Texas, and I don't travel much. So you're not going to get me to come to New York or London anymore. At least not for a while my son is little. But But yeah, if you're ever in South Texas neck of the woods, feel free to come by and have a cup of coffee.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out B2BRevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content, community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to B2BRevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.